Welcome to the Wake Before the Day podcast with my parents, Clark and Bobby. We're excited to talk about the Bible and the Holy Spirit adventures. Thanks for listening.
Friends and family, welcome back to the Wake Before the Day podcast. Clark and Bobby here, excited to study Genesis 31 with you today. Today we're looking at a story essentially between two con men that have been trying to get the best of each other for a couple of decades. And Jacob is realizing that now he needs to form an exit strategy and it's time to hit the road, Jack.
Couple con men that are actually in the same family, so
Yeah.
That's fun. Let me start by reading the first 5 verses. Jacob heard that Laban's sons were saying, "Jacob has taken everything our father owned and has gained all his wealth from what belonged to our father." And Jacob noticed that Laban's attitude toward him was not what it had been. Then the Lord said to Jacob, "Go back to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you." So Jacob sent word to Rachel and Leah to come out of the fields where his flocks were. He said to them, "I see that your father's attitude toward me is not what it was before, but the God of my father has been with me."
Well, it makes sense. If we immerse ourselves in the story, Jacob has become successful because of God at Laban's expense. And so if anybody can take a step back and look at the whole picture, like Laban's shepherds and workers are able to put it together, Laban's children's, Laban himself is realizing Jacob's blessed and he's growing and we are not. And so you can understand why there would be frustration there. Now, putting ourselves in the shoes of Laban's daughters, Jacob's wives,
Right.
Leah and Rachel, it also makes sense why they would be okay with leaving.
Yeah.
Jacob's a scoundrel. Sorry, he is a scoundrel. Laban is also a scoundrel who's only ever looked out after himself.
Yeah.
And he's really made both of their lives miserable. It's not that Jacob and Rachel could just be happy having their life together. He duped Jacob on the wedding night and put Leah in the tent and caused this huge problem. So Leah's hurt in many ways. Rachel's hurt in many ways. Jacob's hurt in many ways. And so you come to a place where you're like, this relationship's not healthy, it's not right. Something needs to change. And change in relationship, because there are 3 different kind of aspects to dealing with conflict. One's the forgiveness piece. The other one's like, can we have restoration here?
Right.
And then lastly, there's reconciliation, where you have like almost a full amends and you're in a healthy relationship together. So before we get to the other 2, what do we need to know about forgiveness? Like, should Jacob forgive Laban? Because Laban's really got the best of him for over 2 decades, it seems like now, or almost 20 years. What should we take away?
Yeah, so forgiveness is kind of one of those things where if you're walking with the Lord, if you're a disciple of Jesus, if you're a believer, then forgiveness should just be flowing from you because of how we've been forgiven. And so that's kind of encompassed in Matthew chapter 18, verses 21 through 22, where Jesus is saying strongly that if we don't forgive, then how are we expecting forgiveness from the Father, when we don't forgive? And so restoration and reconciliation, those are kind of the second fiddle. Those are kind of the harmony to like the melody, the main point of forgiveness that's like that needs to and has to happen, forgiveness.
Yeah. And so then should we seek restoration? Yeah, we should. You should restore relationships through repenting if you are the one who caused the harm, but then also forgiving if you're the one who has been harmed, if you're the victim here. Forgiving as we ought to do so because of what Bobby just pointed to Jesus' words. He's like, you have to do this. However, when it comes to like Jacob and Laban specifically, I have to believe they've had conversations over this time span where they were talking and even apologizing to one another and repenting. But what you notice is that there is not a real change of character. So it's like someone saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, but nothing actually changes in the relationship.
Right, you mean in their journey up until this point,
up until
like
this
current
point,
time.
Correct. It's like Laban has constantly been taking advantage of Jacob, which is ironic because Jacob was taking advantage of his own family. But there comes a point in time where if someone is saying sorry and like repenting, but there's not a real change in a life lived. There's no fruit from that person's life. And they keep doing the things they say they're not going to do. More change is necessary. And so in this story, it's been a few decades. Laban has shown his true colors. Jacob's decision to hit the road is a simple one. But what he's going to have to figure out here is, how do I move forward? And if there can't be restoration, and reconciliation is not always guaranteed either. The Bible talks about being reconciled to one another, but sometimes it's actually unwise and unsafe to reconcile and be back in relationship with people, which
Yes.
comes the need for boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of those words I think a lot of our culture right now is really familiar with. Like, how do you put up boundaries in a relationship? And we should be, and it's good. And we're seeing an example of that here, where I love at the beginning of this text, it tells us that Laban is noticing and his sons are noticing, that Jacob has, more wealth and better standing. Because notice that this relationship, this mutual relationship between Laban and Jacob was fine as long as Laban was happy with it, or at least he was getting what he wanted. But now he's realizing, oh, I'm being overtaken. Like, I'm being overtaken by the house of Jacob, essentially. And now the relationship, isn't helpful for him. And Jacob has permission by the Lord saying, hey, get out of here. Like, put up a boundary and take your family and leave. And this is one of those things where this is actually interfamilial, like what we're seeing here. And so for us, it's so funny to think back to years ago where we had a young family. We were hosting Bible studies at our house. And it was a really fun, special, anointed time of ministry. It was also bedtime for our family. And so there would be times where a boundary that we would set, because mind this, a boundary is not a punishment. A boundary is just saying, for my own safety and my good and my well-being, we need to do this. And then it's up to you with what you want to do. And so I would say to everybody that was in our house, Clark and I, during ministry, would say, hey, we're so glad you're here. You're welcome to be here. We're going to set a timer on my oven at 8 p.m. And that's everyone's cue that we got to go. So there was this boundary that was in place saying, we want you to be here. We're so glad that you're here. And we can't wait to dive into whatever we were studying that night. And then everyone knew the timer's going off.
Yeah.
Let's say goodbye. Let's give a blessing, and then let's leave. And so there's something about clarity with boundaries too that's so helpful, where it's saying, do you want us to help clean up? Do you want us to, get the kitchen in order for you? Can we put the chairs back? And it was like, no, the timer's going off. It's time to go. It's time for bed for our family, and it's time for you guys to get to your houses too. And so that's just a small kind of fun example, but an important example of what it looks like when it comes to friendships and family to have a boundary and make it known.
And one of the things that we've learned in this is if you try to keep healthy boundaries, and this could even be just like peer-to-peer. Someone's texting you all the time. You don't always have to respond, or you can take time to respond, hours or a day later. There's appropriate places for that. When you try to live healthily with boundaries, it's going to come into a tension and conflict with people who do not have healthy boundaries.
Yes.
And they're going to think you're crazy and will often get mad at you. And so that's where you just need to have conviction as to, like, why are we doing what we're doing?
Yeah.
And I'm not responsible for how they're going to respond.
Sure.
I'm responsible for me and my response.
Yep.
And this is what we feel like we're called to. And so whether it's talking to people, who you're having lunch with, how much time are you on your phone, how often are you messaging, who's in your home, who's not in your home, how much you divulge and share to certain people. Like, there are people that will be gifts of God and be helpful for you and I to grow and become like Christ.
Agreed.
Then there's people like Laban that will just take advantage of you, and they're out just to be informed. They want to know. They're busybodies. They're gossips. They're whatever. It could be a lot of things. And that's where you put up boundaries. And then, like, Jacob's realizing, going back to this, it's time to go. So verses 6 through 9, Jacob reveals that really behind the scenes, God has been the one who has interceded and protected Jacob this whole time. And how God is the one that's also provided for him. Jacob knows full well that his success at Laban's expense isn't because Jacob is so awesome. It's because God made it so. So picking up in verse 10, he explains what happened. He said, in breeding season, I once had a dream in which I looked up and saw the male goats mating with the flock. They were streaked, speckled, or spotted. The angel of God, that's God, said to me in a dream, Jacob. I answered, here I am. And he said, look up and see all the male goats mating with the flock are streaked, speckled, or spotted, for I have seen all that Laban has been doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and where you made a vow to me. Now leave this land at once and go back to your native land.
Right.
So this is interesting. If you can jog your memory and go back to what happened, he put some wood and water, and the animals would drink the water and see it, and then all of a sudden they would mate there, and then the animals that were to look like Jacob's, the streaked, spotted, and speckled, were birthed, and then his herds grew.
Yeah.
So people looked at this scientifically, trying to make sense of like, wait a second.
Like, did he conjure this somehow?
Did he conjure this up somehow? Is there some science behind it? And the answer clearly across the board is there is no scientific reasoning behind this. And it's, again, it goes back to the hand of God.
Yeah, his provision over them. Let's pick it up with the ladies again. So this is verse 14 through 16 with Rachel and Leah. Then Rachel and Leah replied, "Do we still have any share in the inheritance of our father's estate? Does he not regard us as foreigners? Not only has he sold us, but he has used up what was paid for us. Surely all the wealth that God took away from our father belongs to us and our children. So do whatever God has told you to do." Essentially, they're understanding, hey, our fathers mistreated us, and we're with you. And so we're dependent on God bringing justice and making all things right through, their departure, but then also their continued trust as he provides for them.
Yeah, and the women are jaded, totally jaded. They've been mistreated. My dad's super shady is essentially what they're saying, and God is a just God. He's bringing about justice. He's taking care of it, and this has been a theme throughout all of the Bible.
Yeah.
And no one's been more exploited in Scripture than Jesus. So in the Old Testament, when God gave the law, and we haven't got to the law yet because we're in Genesis, law comes Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. What you see there is there are times where there is a sense of eye for eye, tooth for tooth. You see the grace of God still all throughout this writing and the law and the way that it's implemented among the people. But when you get to the New Testament and you look at Jesus, Jesus actually gives us clear words on, okay, when it comes to forgiveness, when it comes to interacting with people that have wronged you and you don't like, what are we supposed to do?
Yeah.
And so one of the things the New Testament writers make clear is that God is the God of justice. I believe it was Tim Keller that said, God's coming back with his sword, so you and I can drop ours. In Romans 12, Paul says this. He says, do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what's right in the eyes of everyone. If it's possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it's written, it's mine to avenge, I will repay, says the Lord. On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing so, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. So it's odd that at least in the Old Testament, God used conflict to help provide for his people and get away.
Yeah.
They plundered multiple people in their departure from whether it was Abraham in Egypt or that's God's people leaving Egypt later on, or here, like they're in this interesting relationship with Laban, but then Jacob prospers and leaves.
Right.
And it's the hand of God again. But when it comes to us today, the scriptures are clear on how we're to interact with other people.
Yeah.
Verses 17 through 21, what happens is Jacob packs up his family. He leaves unexpectedly, but little does he know, it's an interesting wrinkle in the story
here. Yeah.
Rachel steals her father's household gods. Now, Jacob has a 3-day head start, but Laban's coming in hot. And so we got to figure out, how's Laban going to respond? How's Jacob going to respond? And what are we supposed to do about these little household gods that were taken?
Yeah.
So keep reading and you'll see what happens.
This is verse 22. On the third day, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. Taking his relatives with him, he pursued Jacob for 7 days and caught up with him in the hill country of Gilead. Then God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream at night and said to him, "Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad." So we've already seen, and Jacob knows that God has had his hand on Jacob this entire time, and now he's intervening personally to Laban in a dream, saying, do not mess with Jacob. I know your heart. I know your intention. I see what's going to play out here. And God comes to Laban in a dream and says, you better not. Yep. You better not.
And Laban now goes on this rant. Laban shows up. He's finally caught up. Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done? You deceived me. You carried off my daughters like captives in war. Why did you run off secretly and deceive me? Why didn't you tell me so I could send you away with joy and singing to the music of timbrels and harps? You didn't even let me kiss my grandchildren and my daughters goodbye. You have done a foolish thing. I have the power to harm you, but last night the God of your father said to me, 'Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad.' Now you have gone off because you've longed to return to your father's household. but why did you steal my gods? So there's a lot to unpack here. Nothing in this story indicates that Laban's a trustworthy guy. So I actually resonate with Jacob. I totally understand why you would leave. And Laban's saying, I would have kissed my grandkids. I would have given you the...
he's putting on himself.
He's gaslighting Jacob here because Laban's the one that's done the wrong for the last number of years. This is gaslighting, where this one person is doing the bad, but they put it on the other person saying, this is all your fault. And I can totally understand why Jacob did what he did. And he even goes to accuse Jacob of kidnapping his own wives. Like, bro, come on, this is ludicrous. Now, verse 30.
Yes.
What do we think about these gods that Rachel took?
Yeah, this is interesting because is this one of those things where she's just being a stinker and she understands, that these were important to her dad and she feels so, used to use the word jaded, she feels so mistreated and she is so annoyed and upset that she understands how big of a deal these, lowercase g gods are to her dad that she's like, and I'm going to take them.
Yeah.
And then just completely runs off with them. I mean, it might have been like there's different customs that these could have been a part of when it comes to like remembering deceased family members. And you have to remember that at this point, Laban, even Rachel and Leah, they're not exclusive worshipers, at all in any sense to Yahweh.
A lot of these people seem to still be polytheistic.
Yes.
They're worshiping a variety of gods.
Right. And we remember that back when we were dealing with like the fertility wars with like all these girls and their
Mandrake plants.
Mandrakes, yes, and them trying to conceive. Yeah. And so what we understand though too is that Jacob, he doesn't know why Rachel took it either. Because he says, initially we're gonna read here, he's like, no, we don't have those.
Could have been a stinker.
Yeah.
One other thing the commentaries say is like there's a shot that this was just a way of life in the ancient Near East, and people would have household gods commemorating ancestors. And there's a way to like thank the gods for their ancestors. And it's almost ancestral worship, which is not good, but that is a possibility there. And it's not until actually Genesis 35, which we'll get to in a couple of days, that God speaks very directly to Jacob and is like, you need to get rid of all of this stuff. You need to worship me and me alone. So in verse 32, Jacob doesn't know that Rachel took them, which is why he says what he says next. So if you're watching this as a movie, it's cringe. You're going, oh no, Rachel's his favorite. She's the one that took it. Jacob doesn't know. And look at what Jacob says. He says, but if you find anyone, Laban, who has your gods, that person shall not live. In the presence of our relatives, see for yourself whether there is anything of yours here with me. And if so, take it. Now Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the gods. Dun, dun, dun. So Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent and then into the tent of the two female servants, but he found nothing. After he came out of Leah's tent, then he entered Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the household gods and put them inside her camel saddle, and she was sitting on them. Laban searched through everything in the tent, but found nothing. So again, if you're watching this as if it's a scene of a movie, the climax is coming as Laban is turning over every couch pillow, looking at every bag, every duffel, and it's like the villain is almost inching closer and closer to Jacob's favorite wife. And what's interesting here is I wonder why Laban started in the order that he did. I wonder if he realized, I bet Jacob's got it out for me. And if Jacob doesn't have it out for me, I bet Leah's got it out for me because of what I did to her. And then Leah's servants, and then he comes to Rachel last. So what's going to happen?
Yes, this is key. This is key here, verse 35. Rachel said to her father, don't be angry, my lord, that I cannot stand up in your presence. I'm having my period. So he searched, but could not find the household gods.
This is fun. According to
the
later Levitical law, Laban's avoidance of touching Rachel or her saddle were quite significant because doing so would have made him ritually unclean.
Yeah.
The law states that any woman who sits or lies during her period becomes unclean, and anyone who touches it is unclean until that evening. And so it means Laban unknowingly avoided defilement by keeping his distance. And the irony of all this here is that Rachel is sitting on some lowercase g gods and defiles them. Well, they're not real gods anyways.
Yeah.
You know, what's funny, just the other day, we had the privilege of talking to our kids about puberty and bodily changes and all this stuff.
This is a really common conversation. We have it often.
Yeah.
You never know which direction it's going to go.
And we were working on this podcast in our front living room while we were talking to our oldest couple daughters and son about this and how life comes into the world and the differences of boys'
People's
bodies and girls'
bodies,
bodies and all this stuff. And I'm
yes.
like, hey guys, look at the Bible right here. Look at what it says. It's perfect timing. They were just kind of like, wow, this is interesting, you know. But we're able to point back to the scripture and see this has actually been a normal part of human life for thousands of years.
Yeah.
God made your body in a beautiful way. And so, translation to all this happening here, Rachel outwitted her dad.
Right.
She's like, I can get away with this.
I can see the potential also for that coming with our daughters and them like, oh, I can't, Dad, because now I'm
Clean
you
your
know,
room.
I think
can't,
in
Dad.
some Bible translations it says the way I have the way of the woman. Like I have the way of
That's funny.
It's like, I'm sorry, Dad, I can't help, with the dishes, or I can't because I'm having like the way of the woman. I can't.
Can't wait for those conversations. It's gonna be a lot of fun. All
It
right,
is.
but
Let's go.
Keep going. So
Summarize.
Laban went on his rant. Now
Yes.
what happens for the next 15 verses is now it's Jacob's turn. The
Jacob's
microphone
turn.
gets handed over to Jacob, and he goes on his
Ranting.
rant. And he's like, I have been falsely accused. I have faithfully served you. I have made personal sacrifices. I have been treated unfairly. I have endured hard conditions. I have been exploited. He worked for 14 years for Laban's daughters and 6 more years for the flocks. And then on top of that, Laban has dealt dishonestly with Jacob and changed his wages up to 10 times. So picking up in verse 42, if the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been with me, then you surely would have sent me away empty-handed. But God has seen my hardship and the toil of my hands, and last night he rebuked you. So it's interesting
That is
here.
interesting.
There's one line in here that struck me, and that's the fear of Isaac. Because usually it's the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. But here it's the fear of Isaac, and it's written to seem to be in a positive light. Meaning, if you put yourself in Isaac's shoes, at some point in time, Isaac was the one bound on an altar. Isaac was the one who's getting ready to be killed.
Right.
And then God intervened. And so Isaac must have had a fear of the Lord and a willingness to submit to what God's called him to. And granted, he didn't do that perfectly either. But here he's saying, hey, this is what I'm calling you to do. And so Isaac recognized what God was doing through Abraham and how God wanted to redeem all of creation. And we're talking globally when he says all the peoples of earth will be blessed through you. So Abraham understood it, Isaac understood it, and now Jacob is fully understanding the lineage and the legacy that he's living into.
Right.
Now, Abraham and Isaac, they were making people within the family. They're making treaties within the family, treaties with the neighbors so that they could live peacefully. And Jacob is a pile of, you know what, on fire. Like this guy doesn't get along with his wives. He doesn't get along with his own family. And he's not getting along with any of their neighbors.
Right.
So it's interesting how God, again, it comes back to God's hand being on Jacob. The only way you can make sense of how this guy is prospering is because of Jacob. And because of what he just said, he recognizes that too.
Yeah.
So Laban realizes, and I'll turn it back over to you.
No, keep going.
Yeah, Laban
He
recognizes
recognizes it.
that God's with Jacob.
Right.
And Laban's not going to, quote unquote, win this battle. So then now he tries to make a peace treaty with Jacob so that they can live amicably.
It can coexist, yes.
Yeah, some form of restoration, a little bit of reconciliation, but yeah.
So it's interesting because we'll read it. They're going to sit down and they're going to legally, make this binding agreement. And it's not just like in the private of their own family or in their own room or tent, but it's open, and other people are seeing these two men sit down. These two men who are usually squabbling, who've been fighting for a couple decades here, are actually going to sit down and do this. So let's pick it up in verse 44. Come now, let's make a covenant, you and I, and let it serve as a witness between us. Laban said, this heap is a witness between you and me today, so of stones. This is why it was called Gilead. It was called Mizpath, because he said, may the Lord keep watch between you and me when we are away from each other. Either of us can't be trusted. So let the Lord keep watch. If you mistreat my daughters, like again, making me sound like a good guy. If you take any wives besides my daughters, even though no one is with us, remember that God is a witness between you and me. This heap is a witness and the pillar is a witness, that I will not go past this heap to your side to harm you, and that you will not go past this heap and pillar to my side to harm me. May the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us. So Laban is catching up here with who God is, and he's actually, using and calling on God in this treaty, saying there's something about So it's curious how the Lord revealed himself to Laban in that dream and how Laban responded obediently with some kind of fear. Like, okay, I won't lay a hand on Jacob. But then also he revealed that Jacob knew about this private dream when Jacob said, the Lord came to you. And so there's some kind of power and belief that's manifesting within Laban when it comes to who Yahweh is. Also, verse 50, I mean, I laughed. It is interesting, though, because he continues to bring up his daughters. And so, I mean, when it comes to family heritage and legacy, that you would think in this time, families stuck together. Like families, they didn't leave. You know, when you went on to build or prepare a place for your bride, it was onto the existing house that was already there.
Yeah.
And so for them to separate, that's a huge deal. And so Laban's saying, hey, you know, God's watching you. And it's funny because even though Laban doesn't necessarily agree or love or submit to Yahweh, he knows the power of him. So he's saying, I know that your God is watching you. Verse 50. Let's talk about how these pile of stones become like a boundary when it comes to territory.
Well, like
here.
Today in our cities, you could go to the city hall and get a blueprint for your property, and there are clear boundary lines where you know, like, hey, this fence shows us, like, that's my neighbor's house, this is my house. I got to paint this side of the wall, they got that side, my lawn, their lawn. These boundary markers became actually like key pieces of legal standing, so you know where your land is and where your neighbor's land is. And archaeologists have actually found these standing stones dating back to this time, where in the ancient Near East they found these stones marking off people's property. And so this really happened. But as we conclude, I want to reflect on a verse that actually came in a previous chapter that we're seeing being fleshed out here. It's Genesis 30, verse 27. It's something Laban says to Jacob. Laban in his heart recognizes what God's been doing, because in this verse he said, the Lord has blessed me because of you. So it's true that Jacob has had success at the expense of Laban, but what Laban knows is that his life is still better off because God is with Jacob and Jacob is in his life. So I understand that over the course of the chapter there's competition, there's conflict, but it's cool to hear Laban acknowledge that he's blessed to have Jacob in his life. And as I thought about you, listener or watcher, and then you and me, Bobby, I wonder how many people in our lives could say the same about, like, the Christian today, like the unbeliever, saying, I'm blessed to have you in my life just because of how you conduct yourself and the values that we hold on to as believers. One of my favorite memories of working here at Emmanuel is when we have to do Paramount Cleanup Days or Compton Initiative Days. And we would all go out and everyone would have the same color shirt, and they're painting houses, planting gardens, doing murals at schools, cleaning up trash in the city, just trying to love our neighbor, essentially. And I love it when people would come out of their house bewildered, because there'd be anywhere from hundreds to thousands of people overcoming a neighborhood and cleaning it up just because they want to love their neighbor. And people like, hey, what's going on here?
Who are you guys with?
Who are you with? And then our job was always to actually turn the attention to the local church. Whatever church was closest by, we'd partner with them and go, we're here to supporting them. They're the ones that want to love you. And I'd like to think that those people realize we're better off because that church is in the neighborhood.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
And there are people in your family or at school or at work that are like, we're better off because we have a Christian in our midst that's got a great work ethic, that's super moral, that treats other people with dignity, and is kind. And so that's something for us to think about. Do the unbelievers in our life recognize that their life is better because someone who follows Jesus is in their life? So there's more that could be said there, but something just to think about as now Jacob and Laban are getting ready to part ways.
Parting ways, you guys. Thanks for joining us today. It was good to flesh, some of these chapters out, have fun things in there. It's fun to talk with you guys about. Enjoy it. Tell someone else about it, whether it's around your table, whether it's in your apartment, at your workplace. It's a gift to study the Holy Scriptures with you, and it's a gift to share as well. So God bless you, and we'll see you tomorrow for Genesis chapter 32.
See you then.
The Lord bless you and keep you. Don't make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face towards you and give him his peace. Have a great day.